Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Long Walk Talks. I am your host, David Hensley, owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today by my co-host, Long Walk VP, Stan Wilson Lee.
Aye.
Long Walk associate producer, Chris Barnes.
Oh, there's a title for me now.
Yeah, I thought I probably should start doing that.
AP. Ass prod.
Oh.
Wow, we're off to a great start. And our guest host today is an actress, a multimedia specialist, and my lovely wife, Katie.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Big fan of this podcast. I'm very excited.
And today we are going to be discussing, if you've read the title of the episode, you already know, the Stanley Kubrick classic, The Shining. Now, when we started talking about doing this podcast, I told Stan and Chris, every 5 episodes or so, I wanted to do an episode specifically where we sit around and we discuss one movie for the whole episode. And when I told Stan about it, he said, so we're just going to pick a movie and talk about how much we love it for 2 hours? And I said, no. We're going to pick a movie and we're going to talk about how much we love it for about 90 minutes, because that's about as long as I want the episodes to go.
But then there's me.
But then there's Stan.
Go 2 hours.
And the magic
2
of
and a half,
editing.
3 hours.
And the magic, yeah. This was not originally the first film I wanted to discuss, but in honor of it being October, me and Katie's favorite month, I thought it would be good to start off with a spooky movie.
Spoopy.
So we've broken it down into 5 topics, but before we begin, I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts about The Shining in general. How do you feel about it? How many times you've seen it? Katie, start us off.
I've actually lost count of how many times I've actually watched The Shining, but on the car ride over here, I described to Chris like I consider it one of my favorite films because I quantify it in the amount of times that I've watched a film over and over and over again and can still find something new to appreciate and enjoy about it. And I really enjoyed the podcast episode where you guys talked about your favorite elements in movies, because mine is very specifically color in movies and the way that it's used in movies and what it means and why does the coat have to be red and why are all the carpets in The Shining so abrasively hard to look at. Like if you've seen The Shining, or even if you're a part of the horror movie culture, you know what the carpet looks like in the hotel. It's iconic, and I think that element to carry over to a huge following of people is saying something. So does it have its little quips that don't really hold true or hold up? Yeah. But at the same time, I really appreciate it as a film. I think it's great.
As a testament to how much Katie loves The Shining, she has a baseball bat with her currently that she is holding for inspiration.
I bought a baseball bat for this podcast. It makes me feel empowered. And I'm looking at Chris, and his head is really looking like it needs to be
like a
bashed
watermelon.
the fuck in.
And it is league championship.
I mean,
season.
probably.
It is. Go Braves.
So I'm going to phrase everything I say very carefully for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Stan, what are your thoughts in general about The Shining?
The Shining for me, I've probably seen it as a whole maybe 2 times full. I've seen it broken up like thousands, of times, clips wise or whatever. I have to preface that it's not even my favorite Kubrick film. So I can't say that I have it up there in my Katie echelon of greatness, so it's like
That's what makes us different people.
I know.
That's okay.
But I do have a Katie echelon of greatness though.
Oh, is that my stage name? That's my drag name, actually.
Katie Echelon.
Greatness.
Tens.
But for me, because my favorite performances in Shining are the Shelley Duvall performance and the boy who plays the boy. I forgot who.
Danny Lloyd.
Danny Lloyd, I think has a brilliant time in that film, and I can just imagine. Hopefully, Kubrick didn't do to him what he did to Shelley.
Oh no, Danny Lloyd got off comparatively easy because he thought that he was in a comedy.
I don't know how that's possible,
I have no idea how the hell he
because
pulled that off, but the story is
he looks legitimately scared.
He does,
Like,
and that-
how do you tell a kid, hey, it's a comedy, and like get that kind of reaction out of him? I don't
hey,
understand that.
crazy looking Jack Nicholson is going to chase you around a hedge maze in this family comedy.
Yeah,
that you're
laugh
in.
about it.
And I think
I think he
that,
was very good at making him feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's the thing,
Yeah.
and that the whole maze thing, I think they turn it kind of into a carnival thing for him and stuff. So it's like, yeah, you get to run around this maze, and I think Jack Nicholson probably was really good to him, and then Scatman Crothers, he got to hang out with him.
Man.
So I think that's a good time.
Breakout role.
But Shelley Duvall, man,
Only
that's
because
a-
he like verbally abused her.
he got a performance out of her that she would never want to do again. So
Well, I think at a certain point she just stopped acting.
yes.
He was so
she went to
shitty
TV.
her.
She went to TV.
Oh, I mean, over the course of the film, I think she stopped acting
yes.
terrified
True that.
and was
was
just
like, just let it end.
yeah.
And so for me, the performances get me every time. I expect what you get from Jack Nicholson. That's a great performance. It's Jack Nicholson, so it's like they sold the movie for that. But then you get the performance of Shelley Duvall, and then you get Scatman Crothers, and really one of the most interesting layered characters of that movie. That's not as expanded as it is in the book. There's a little bit more about that character in the book, but what you get for that movie is really good for that character. And then also the colors.
You can't get past them.
The two girls in the elevator and stuff, the blood coming down the hallway. Just what Kubrick was able to do, and then he continued with those motifs through the rest of his film oeuvre. From that point on, is using, he totally experienced color in that movie, I think, and added it to everything else. And so it's like when I was talking about Peter Greenaway and that in that episode you were speaking of, Katie, it's like I see that coming out of what was used in The Shining and Kubrick's stuff after that. So.
Chris, having and now
What
last night was your first time
Value
watching
our
it?
opinions about The Shining, Chris.
I do, and I will.
Or
And here's
validate.
mine. I watched it for the first time in
Okay.
full last night. I found it an enjoyable film. The end.
Oh,
Oh.
Okay.
Wow, okay.
So that was your first time?
Yes.
You hadn't seen it previously.
I had not seen it.
Did it feel like the first time?
like the very first
Like
time.
the very first time?
Hello.
All
Is
right,
it
so
me?
we're going to kick off the discussion.
That
with
was
the
right
first
in my
of our
ear, and I'm
topics,
scared.
Which we're going to cover very quickly: book versus movie. Stan, you just mentioned you have read The Shining.
I have, believe it or not. I had to know it because I think Dr. Sleep, the sequel, the story from Danny's point of view, I think is a great takeoff, or great sequel from that, from The Shining. So.
I should point out at this time that we are, for the purposes of this discussion, we are specifically discussing Stanley Kubrick's 1980 The Shining. We won't be talking about the I think it was sci-fi miniseries from the late 90s. So very briefly, just covering the major differences from the book to the movie. First of all, one of the biggest problems Stephen King had with the film was the casting of Jack Nicholson, who right out of the gate you get an extremely creepy vibe from in the film. You know that something is off with him immediately, whereas in the book, Jack is a lot more sympathetic and a lot more empathetic and relatable at the beginning of the book, and it really takes a long time for the hotel to get its hooks into him. From the movie, you get the impression that as soon as they get there, possibly even before they get there, the hotel has already started to fuck with him.
Well, but he's already been up there for the interview and stuff too. So, I mean, when the film opens, we see him going to the interview, and he seems fairly stable. It isn't until Ullman tells him the story of the murders that we kind of start to see some sort of shift.
An interview that happens in real time?
Yeah, basically,
Good Lord.
the entirety of that interview plays out in front of you.
I think that might be my major overarching criticism with this movie. This is a great movie that could stand to lose a half hour to an hour.
And I think the European cut does lose about a half hour of it.
Where? Like in the beginning?
I don't know. I haven't seen the European cut. I know that there was a different ending to the film.
Oh, we need to find that.
Yeah. Well, no, we can't. Because as far as I know, the only evidence besides the script pages and the stories from the actors that it was actually filmed, the only evidence of this ending is a single still. This is getting off topic, but the film originally ended after we see him in the snow, frozen to death. The Overlook manager, Ullman, goes to the hospital that Wendy and Danny are at and brings Wendy flowers. And when she asks about Jack, he tells her that they never found a body.
What?
And then I think from there it cuts to that push in. And one week from the opening of the film back in 1980, Kubrick had that scene pulled from every print of the film. So it doesn't even exist anymore. And as far as I know, it's not even like a special feature. One of the articles that I was reading this week had an image of the guy who plays Ullman in the hospital set holding flowers. But talking about differences between the book and the film, the other one is in general the characterization of Jack and Wendy, who in the book are described as very attractive young blondes.
Oh no!
Very much in love with each other.
I have nothing against Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, but that is...
Oh yeah, they cast completely opposite of how they are described in the book.
I think they were also made to look at their, I hate to say it, greasiest?
Oh, well.
Yeah, like Shelley's hair never got washed fully, completely. Bless her.
Yeah. And then the other great big difference between the book and the movie is the ending, in which Scatman Crothers' character, somebody help me out here real quick.
Halloran.
Dick Halloran.
Dick Halloran, yes, thank you. Halloran makes it up to the Halloran makes it to the hotel. He takes a mallet to the face. Oh yeah, Jack uses a mallet and a roque mallet instead of a axe. Halloran.
What type of mallet is that? Is
it's essentially like a croquet mallet.
Oh,
my God.
Okay. Oh God.
Halloran gets a croquet or roque mallet to the face and breaks his cheek and his jaw, but otherwise survives and gets Danny and Wendy out. They briefly hint at it in the movie, but in the book, the boiler in the basement is a big problem. The steam has to be released periodically to keep it from building up.
They have to cycle it around.
And so throughout the whole book, either Jack or Wendy are going down to the basement and releasing the steam. Well, in the book, Jack realizes as he's chasing Wendy and Danny around that it hasn't been released in a long time. Or I think, if I remember correctly, the hotel kind of warns him that it's in danger.
Yeah.
And so Jack runs down to the boiler room and doesn't get there in time. And the boiler explodes and destroys the hotel after Halloran and Wendy and Danny have escaped. So, Stan, can you think of any other big discrepancies that I missed between the book and the movie?
I don't think it's a discrepancy, but am I wrong in thinking that when he goes into the room and he meets what's her face in the tub, in the book it's a lot more in depth, isn't it? Or is
of who she is, like how she drowned? Or?
Yeah, there is an explanation for who that woman is. Oh. And in the book, she was, essentially a cougar. She came to...
Atta girl.
Yeah, she came to the hotel with her much younger lover. And somebody, I think it's Grady, when Jack is talking to Grady's spirit, he tells him that or maybe it was Ullman at the beginning of the book. She came there with her much younger lover. He looked miserable the entire time he was there with her, but she was rich. And then one day he went and told the hotel staff, "Oh, I'm taking her car out for a ride," and never came back. And like the next day, she slit her wrists in the tub.
Oh.
So that's the tub lady from the movie.
Wow.
We get no explanation for that. Kubrick included a lot of things, and we're going to talk about the guy in the bear suit later.
Must we?
Yes, we must.
Because for me,
You have to talk
the
about
books-
it. You have to look at it.
The bear man and his bare ass.
Yeah.
book-
Oh, God.
the book seemed to go into more of the picture,
Mm-hmm.
and filling out the history.
It's
and
very storied
with-
past. Yeah.
Yes, and it takes us back to when this stuff was, to set up all of Jack's stuff, and what's influenced to him. But in the movie, we see the picture, and then that influences us, and then we see the girls in the hallway and the blood from the elevator, so it's all filled in that sense. But the idea that the book actually lets us into the picture and who those people are in that picture. There's a picture if you haven't seen.
Yeah, we'll discuss. That's going to be our final topic, is what's going on with the picture at the end. It's also, I think, worth mentioning that in the book, right towards the end, Jack is able to get a hold of himself long enough to tell Danny he loves him and to get out.
Yes.
Before the hotel makes him smash his own face with the roque mallet.
Oh, my God.
And essentially kills himself, and the
Yeah.
hotel is basically
Explode.
Weekend at Bernie's-ing his body by the end of the book. The hotel fully takes control over him and is just using his body
You
to
know,
try.
if you love the story so much, I'm pretty sure you would have found a better reference.
What, Weekend at Bernie? Yeah.
Shame
Hey,
on
it was
you.
the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
Because now you're just going to picture
Because-
Jack Nicholson
You know why? Because for some
With
reason...
sunglasses on and a Hawaiian shirt, like
Doing the Bernie dance.
See, Jack is fine. Wave, Jack, wave. No,
Show him our secret handshake.
you know why it came up? It's because, weirdly enough, we've been referencing it off and on for like the
I
past few
know.
weeks.
Yeah, that reference is stuck in
Out
my
of
head
nowhere.
for no
Just
apparent reason.
no good reason.
What a ridiculous film.
It is.
Series
The
of films.
sequel is even more ridiculous, but that's not what we're talking about.
Anywho.
Anywho, all right, so that is the first of our topics,
How
the
many
book versus the
tabs do you have
movie.
open?
I want to talk.
sorry
Sorry, go
to
ahead,
interrupt,
Katie.
but I was always apprehensive about reading the book after loving the movie as much as I do, and now hearing those differences in the book, it really versus the movie, it really makes me want to read the book.
It's a different experience, and
really
and
is.
it's as valid. It's a valid experience in itself, where a lot of stuff tries to make the book obsolete when it's done as a film or a play or whatever. But the idea that
Is there a play?
I'm just when things are adapted.
There's an opera.
There is an opera.
Oh my god.
But the book is an experience on its own, and because it's a Stephen King experience, you're going to get that idea that the Stephen King version of The Shining, where this is legitimately and definitely a Kubrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why
experience in a
Kubrick
film.
and King did not get along, because King hated the changes that Kubrick
Yeah.
made to his story.
It sounds like they were really extreme, but I kind of appreciate the vagueness of the movie because, like the lady in the bathtub, you kind of create your own story of why she's there. And I thought she had drowned because, like, there's nothing in the makeup that indicates, like, the makeup is great on that woman. It's disgusting. But, like, there's no indications that her wrists were slit or that she killed herself. She just looked like she had been drowned in the bathtub.
She's
in
old. She
some
fell in
way.
the tub.
Yeah.
So
Help me, life alert.
I do want to say one thing in regards to what Stan said. It reminded me of when I went way back, I think it was 2005. I went and saw Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the movies. And I was with people, and then, of course, there was someone there who was like, oh, the book was better. And I eventually, because of those movies, I went and read the whole book series. And I enjoyed it greatly. And I remember reading somewhere that Douglas Adams always had the idea, he always I think changed it up slightly because he did the books, he did the radio adaptation, he had a mini series, and then finally the movie came out, and everyone was like, "Oh, the books were better," but it's like Douglas Adams was like, "Ah, it's just a different iteration."
Yeah.
It is something different, and to Kubrick's credit versus Stephen King not liking it, is like in a book you have a lot more leeway to go into backstories and hidden information in ways that you will never be able to convey in a 2.5 hour movie. And so I think he put all those things in there because they were part of the story, but it works because it's just like, well, this hotel is packed with haunted crap. And it's just
This hotel's packed with haunted crap.
Hotel is alive.
You can quote me.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
There's my
One of
review.
Stephen
It's
King's
sentient.
favorite.
If The Shining happened in
tropes.
South Carolina, this hotel's
That's me on TripAdvisor.
Yeah. Would not recommend.
Yeah, Stephen King loves the haunted thing that shouldn't be alive, but is. Like Family Guy famously pointed out
That's
with
his
this
next
haunted
novel.
lamp.
He's a haunted lamp.
A haunted thing that shouldn't
so-
be alive, but is.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
No, it's okay. Now that we're talking about it, before we move on, since we brought up the guy in the bear suit, if you have ever watched the movie and you've gotten to that scene at the end where Wendy is running around looking at all the insanity that's going on around her, she gets up to the 3rd floor and turns a corner, and there is an open room where there is a man in a bear suit
With a flap open.
with the flap over his ass hanging open.
His bare ass.
Yes, thank you. You got to that joke before I could.
I'm sorry. I
And he
didn't mean to
turns
embarrass
and
you.
the man. Well played. The man in the bear suit is on his knees and turns and looks at Wendy. And
Brr?
then a gentleman
Yeah.
sits up on the bed in a tuxedo as though he was just receiving a blowjob from the man in the bear suit.
Excuse you.
Can we help you?
Yeah, like turn around, some privacy, please. So if
Yeah,
you,
does the book go into that?
yes,
Okay, please
So
tell
in
me.
the
I
book,
need to know.
The man in the tuxedo is named Horace Derwent,
Yeah,
and
it
he
is.
is a not so subtle proxy of Howard Hughes.
Oh.
And in the book, Horace is a depraved bisexual with a young male lover that he likes to embarrass. He gets off on embarrassing him publicly. So at a black tie affair in the book, he makes his young lover dress up like a dog and do dog tricks for the other party members. So in the movie, the guy in the tuxedo, that's Horace Derwent, and in the bear suit, that is his young lover.
Are we sure it's a
Getting his
bear?
milk bone.
Maybe? No.
Oh, I'm definitely sure it's a bear.
I don't know how dog costume would be any better in that situation. I don't know why I said
I just
that.
picture him wearing like Dalmatian ears with a spot on his nose, and it'd be less terrifying. As silly
Yeah,
and
that-
ridiculous as that scene
It's
it's
kind-
still fucking terrifying.
It's
Yeah,
messed
'cause,
up.
like I said, the hotel is like I said before we started. The hotel is basically revealing itself to Wendy. It's
Yes.
Yeah.
like now that it's like, aha, I have you now. Here's all the stuff you've been missing.
Yeah, here's an elevator full of blood. Here's a ballroom full of skeletons and black tie affair.
Okay, I'm gonna say it. That's the most ridiculous part of this movie. From, like Stanley Kubrick, who is all told a genius, looked at that at the end of the day and was like, "Yep." I'm not saying
The
it's
skeleton?
yes.
Instead of the
I'm
cutscene
sorry,
of like, we
everything
never
else-
found a body, let's keep the skeletons in there.
Everything else is this theme of like psychological creeping horror, and then it's room full of skeletons from
it's-
the haunted mansion.
It's like that. The room
Hey,
full
the
of
Haunted
skeletons
Mansion's
is
really
supposed to be
scary.
the culmination of everything. Because it's like guy in a bear suit blowing a man in a tuxedo, elevator full of blood.
It's the result.
Here's
They just all looked very miffed that she wandered into their party.
I also
Well,
love
the-
the guy
the-
with the head wound.
Yeah.
Lovely
Now that-
party,
no,
isn't
see,
it?
That was appropriately scary. But
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's silly. It's the silliest part of that whole thing.
You know, there are some things in that movie, like I said before, that just don't hold water now. I'm sure when it came out, it was really scary, but we've got really gory horror films out there now that have desensitized a lot of us.
Yeah,
so
and
seeing
they-
a room full of skeletons is probably not like the booga booga that we're
Yeah,
used to.
and they probably had already spent their gore budget.
Yeah.
And so they said, I don't
Well,
have
on
any
the
more.
40-something takes it took to
Yeah.
kill
Exactly.
Scatman
Right.
Crothers.
So it's like, I don't have any more money to make.
Jim, I got a bunch of
group
skeletons
people
in the
that
truck.
are
You know-
Decompose, so
Everyone
it's
gather your Halloween decorations.
Throw them out
Half
in
the
here.
black people in this movie died, and I'm just going to point that out.
Wait.
All?
There's the other black man that's prominently featured is the guy who runs the gas station.
Oh, no, yeah, he's dead.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
he's very
Wow.
dead. Yeah.
God.
No, yeah.
Thanks,
He-
Chris.
He went to go get Scatman,
That's
that
making us
snowcat, and
racist.
ran himself over.
That's
So
what I
he's
was. Sorry.
Sorry, I'll revise my figures.
dead. Yeah, get it right.
Well, from what I was reading earlier this week, part of that 30 minutes that they cut out of the European release is like most of Holleran's trip back. Like all those cutaways we get to, like, he's on the phone again.
Yeah.
Now he's on a plane. Now he's at the airport. Now he's renting
I think
a car.
that's fair
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's a
it
reasonable
is.
assumption is like after the phone call, it's like okay, he traveled. He
Yeah.
immediately went and I can see that. That's
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of that's something a lot of bad movies like to do to pad out their runtime is like
Mm-hmm.
okay, we'll just show them parking in real time. That'll add some time to the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm on the opposite end of that because I think that's an important thing, because you were talking about the real time interview. It's like I think that is set up as a meter, because there's shit happening in between and concurrently to his travel, to his answer, and so it's like we need to have an idea that Halloran is trying to get there, but we also need the meter of time that
Yeah,
he might
says
not
it, though.
make it.
They could've been quicker.
We know a flight from Miami to Colorado is gonna take some time. When he gets to the airport, he calls the guy at the Snowcat rental facility. The Hertz, I don't know.
And Snowcats are
But
badass.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. I want one. But we get that time increment when he makes that phone call to that guy to say, "Oh, it's going to take me about 5 hours." So we get the timetable there. And we get the flight from Miami, and he's constantly asking, like, when are we going to get there? It'll take me 5 hours. He's trying to get there as fast as we can, as we travel along with him. But
It's also, I think, it adds to the gut punch where he went through all of this
Yes.
fucking trouble. He gets to the hotel and is there less than 5 minutes.
Exactly.
He accomplishes nothing, really, and then he gets
So
axed
disheartening.
in the chest.
Jack
Yeah.
Nicholson lopes at him like an.
Yeah.
I feel like if the travel time had been left in there, it would be 10 times more painful to watch him die, though. If we had made all of those stops of him calling again and, checking on the family and added back that time, it would have been just as heartbreaking to see him get an axe to the chest.
Yeah.
I wonder who got his wall art.
Oh, that's a good point.
Oh, man.
Every time we watch it, I tell Katie, I want those two paintings. In my
I feel
Dick
like
Halloran is a pimp.
yeah.
I feel like
Classy motherfucker.
He is.
Oh man, I feel like that wall art and the first half of the ghost encounter is like your reward for sticking out the movie so far.
Here's some boobies.
Let me know if I'm wrong on this, but Dick Halloran ends up in Doctor Sleep, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he because he survives the book.
Yeah, he's in the beginning because the Dr. Sleep, if I remember correctly, picks up not too terribly long after The Shining, and Dick sort of becomes
Like 22 years because he's like 20.
well over the whole
or something.
book, like the crux, the main plot of the book takes place like 20 or 30 years after The Shining, but the book itself picks up not too long. And so Dick isn't in it a whole lot. He was there for a lot of Danny's childhood.
Yes. He was the one. I think he was one that kind of suggested that he uses the Shining to be a guide for folks to, pass.
Yeah.
I think so. I was really, when I read Dr. Sleep, I'm like, he didn't survive the movie. But I was really happy to see Halloran in the book, even though it's only a small, but it's like, oh, good. He survived enough to see Danny on, and get him to be active.
So our next topic of discussion, this is probably going to be a pretty short one, but I just want to hear everyone's thoughts. The geography of the hotel is fucking bonkers. First of all, right at the beginning of the movie, we get that beautiful helicopter shot of the outside of the Overlook Hotel, which is actually the Timberland Lodge. Is that that's the
it's
exterior?
in Oregon.
Yeah, the Timberland Lodge in Oregon is the exterior they used for the Overlook. Not a fucking hedge maze in sight. Continuity error or part of Kubrick's grand design? Because as the movie goes on, the hotel starts to make less and less sense. And the most obvious one is right there at the beginning of the film when Jack has his interview with Ullman. There is a window behind Ullman's desk that realistically should look out into a hallway. That hallway being the one where when Wendy, if you go online, there are maps, and I suggest you look at
A lot.
people who
In
spent
color.
a lot of time studying how the hotel is laid out in the movie. So from Halloran's office, that window should look out onto the hallway that Wendy runs into at the end where the elevator doors open and blood spills out. Except instead, you get a bright sunny exterior outside of his office that makes no fucking sense whatsoever. And my other favorite discrepancy between in the layout of the hotel is one I had never noticed before until I started researching this earlier this week. Part of the ending involves Danny getting out of the family room that they're staying in by climbing out of the window in the bathroom that Wendy helps him get out of. Well, if you look at the room's positioning in the hallway, it's pretty much right in the middle of the hallway on the second floor. You walk into a little landing, and on your right is Danny's bedroom. On the left is the living room, the bedroom, the bathroom. So geographically, that would put that bathroom window jutting up against the room that's next door to them. But if you look at the hallway set, just like 10 feet down from their door is another door to another room. So the interior of their hotel room is way too big for the way the floor is laid out, and that window should go nowhere. And when Wendy's bringing Jack breakfast at the beginning of the movie, she comes around a corner. So even if you assume that their hotel room takes up the entire length of that floor, the window should then just be looking out into a hallway. So that is bananas.
I can give you the very simple Scully-esque answer, and that is, in technical terms, Kubrick had the geography of whatever room they were in, or wherever part of the hotel they were in, just to be whatever he needed for the story to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just basically
Because the interiors, sorry, go
you're
ahead.
fine.
The interiors weren't filmed in the hotel. They were actually, a handful of them were built in London
it was
and filmed
it was
that
an
way.
enormous set.
Yeah,
because
so-
Kubrick refused to leave the UK.
Right. So,
that has to be. I mean, that's usually what it is for most of those kind of things, and it works in service of the story of the hotel is evil and possibly messing with their minds.
Well, one of the theories that I read is that this isn't a movie about a haunting; it's a movie about telekinesis, which this really gets out there.
Technically telepathy, but
Both, because Kubrick was so well known for being so OCD about his shot compositions that a lot of what appears to be continuity errors, like you noticed this last time and I never had, the first time Wendy goes to visit, or the first time we see Wendy go to visit Jack and he loses his shit about if you hear me typing or if you don't hear me typing or whatever the fuck you hear, don't come in here. But the background behind Jack, the chair placement changes every single shot.
it's there, it's not there, and then it's there again.
The scrapbook on his desk changes pages between shots. So did a master shot maker like Kubrick, who is so obsessive about the placement of everything in his shot, did he miss all of this or was it purposeful?
I also, the last time we watched it, caught one more, what I would consider a continuity error, but when you mentioned Wendy bringing Jack breakfast, we pan back from the vanity mirror in that shot, and there's a piece of art right above their bed, and we see it in that shot, and then it's never there again.
Again, it could be since the hotel is alive, it's a sentient being, it can be whatever it needs it to be.
And I think that's why he let that stuff go, probably.
To let Jack
Yeah.
fall. And
Because
so,
It's just so minimal.
yeah, the idea that this could be
The hotel is fucking with them constantly.
yeah, and
Is what
that
you're saying?
the dream has already happened, or whatever, whatever slipstream has gone on, and that hotel will keep you in whatever it needs to.
And I
keep you
think he let that stuff, even if it bothered him, go in service of the story, because when you look at the pages that Jack has been typing, and I paused on some of them, sometimes all work and no play makes Jack a dull bog or a dull bot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was something else I read earlier this week. Sometimes on a couple pages it says all work and no play makes Jack adult boy.
Yeah, and there's parts where like they spacing got mixed up, and it did all that. Yeah, it's just.
I think that's just chalking up to a poor PA that had to sit there and write a lot of pages.
But it also plays well into the mania that Jack.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the article that I read pointed out that the adult boy thing, if you look at the layout of the keyboard, the L is a long way away from the T. So this theory posited adult boy had to be purposeful because you're not accidentally going to hit a T.
Right. But how was a
How long
typewriter
was he
laid out?
typing? How long was that poor intern typing?
Yeah.
It's
that's a
because
good point.
they were not typing on a keyboard; they were typing on a typewriter. So
Typewriter still had the same
Yeah, it was QWERTY,
layout.
whatever, it's magic.
Do we have any? Sorry.
That was what that's one of the things that I do love about The Shining, Kubrick's Shining, is that even though King was a little bit more, well, probably a lot more purposeful in the attraction that the hotel was giving to Jack to bring him into that world, I believe Kubrick allowed that hotel right from the beginning to be. I mean, even in interview stage, that it's already starting at that point, or maybe even before that. That interview never happened, or this is for some reason he's driving around and he sees this hotel and he ends up there. So. And that just
He's
goes.
always been there, though, Stan.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is that, and then again with the picture, when you see him in the picture, it's like the idea that this hotel has Jack from second moment to uno, whatever, and it's already doing the stuff. Wendy and Danny may not even be around this whole time, so that might be, the idea that this has happened. This is going to happen. There's no, and Kubrick's really good about that by setting up a world, putting you into it, and then there's whatever can happen happens, And so I think that's what I really enjoy about that hotel in Kubrick's Shining, is that it's the character. Nothing.
And it's Crazy Town Banana Pants.
It's Crazy Town Banana Pants, and whatever it wants to happen will happen. There was no choice for the Torrance family not to experience that. That was going to be that was their fate for being in that place.
I might have missed some of the early warning signs because of Stuart Ullman, who is not Charles Napier. I couldn't help but be just completely distracted by him owning the widest tie knot I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
And the widest tie,
Yes,
too.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
my God.
Yeah.
We were still in 70s
It was
fashion
like
land.
it was like Austin Powers when the guy with the mole comes out. I was like, oh, my God.
That tie. All right, so
Money.
we're going to move on. So Katie and I have watched Room 237. Stan, I know you've watched it.
Yeah.
Chris, I doubt you have, right?
I've watched Room 227.
I don't know what that is.
I do, Jack.
So in the book, the hotel room is Room 217. Was it the Stanley Hotel was...
Okay. All right.
The Stanley Hotel was afraid for Kubrick to use that number for the movie because they were afraid they actually have a room 217. They didn't want to affect that room getting booked. Turns out that actually has way driven up the booking of that room.
Yeah. In the
but so it's-
Stanley or in the Timberland? Which one?
I think it's in the Stanley because they just used the Timberland for
They didn't use the Stanley at
exteriors.
all.
Right, no, but it's what it's what King based the.
Oh, that's the room he stayed in.
Yes.
Him and his wife.
Because
Yeah.
obsessive fanboys always find out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, fangirls too. I would pay
Sorry.
double to
I
stay
did
there.
not mean to discriminate.
Yeah. Shut
So
up.
there is a documentary called Room 237 based on all of the conspiracy theory, well, the big conspiracy theories that people have found throughout the last 38 years. By the way, guys, this movie is almost 40 years old. But over like
Doesn't look a day over 50.
Yeah.
this came out
Well,
in
it
I
looks
think
great.
2013. But this is all the big conspiracy theories. So we're going to
us
discuss
up.
these briefly, and I want to hear your thoughts as we go through them. Number one, the movie is actually about Native American genocide. That's why whenever they go into the walk-in pantry, there are all those boxes of Calumet baking powder. Calumet?
Or there might be a strong Native American presence because it's set in Colorado.
And also built on an Indian
Yeah.
burial ground.
Yes, they
Yeah.
make a very strong.
And it's decorated in that way too.
Oh, yeah, there's a
and
lot of-
He just
I mean-
sloughs it off like, oh yeah, we're buried on.
And Stephen King's gonna
ancient ground.
touch into. I mean, everything he does has something or other about history and about atrocities committed. But Kubrick's gonna take that even farther. So it's viable, but it's incidental.
Well-
I'm sorry. I love how casually that's tossed out on the real-time tour of the hotel. It's like, oh, it was built on Indian burial ground
In fact, we had to repel attacks.
from Indians as they were building it
Yeah,
while we
so
were
it's-
desecrating their graves.
It's also been suggested that the river of blood that comes out of the elevators at the end is representative of all the Native Americans that were killed.
Or all the
That's
dead
their
people in
blood.
general.
Yeah. I mean,
So that's
that hotel's had a lot of people dying in it.
Yeah.
That it caused.
so that's one theory. That's one way it could have happened for you Clue fans. Then there is the movie is actually Stanley Kubrick's confession about his part in faking the
my God.
Apollo 11
Oh my-
moon landing.
No.
Goodness.
Yes.
They get better. I can't say
I
that this is the
guarantee
most
you-
outrageous one.
Admittedly, for me, that conspiracy theory to me is the most boring conspiracy theory ever. It's
Yeah.
it's like why is that even considered a conspiracy theory? The moon landing.
Well,
Don't
because
mess with
obviously
it.
Stanley Kubrick directed the footage of
Right.
it, and he's
Is that
telling
why
us.
it took us so long to quote unquote get to the moon? Because he
No.
had
'Cause he was-
97 takes of Buzz Aldrin like hopping off on a ping pong moon. Like,
Well, let's not forget the Apollo 11 sweatshirt that Danny wears in the film,
Okay,
which is
I
obviously.
I thought about that earlier because I remember hearing about that rumor before. Here's what I'm absolutely sure Kubrick heard that rumor and knew about it. And I don't think he intentionally put Danny in that sweatshirt, but he's like, he saw that as an option. He's like, yeah, do that. Do it.
well, he's like, okay, just because it's an Apollo
Just to
11
troll people.
sweater, he's also wearing a Mickey Mouse sweater. Are there any theories about
Yeah, they
Walt
filmed it on
Disney
He killed Walt
soundstage.
Disney, obviously.
secretly, you know,
It was filmed on
spawning
Disney
a
soundstage on the
hotel?
moon.
Okay.
All right. So the next one.
That was Walt Disney's hotel, yeah.
The next one is
Got a
that
lot of haunted
Chilling
crap in it.
indictment of Walt Disney.
Oh my god.
The Shining is
Happiest place on earth. Sorry.
The Shining is actually about the Holocaust.
No.
Goodness, Papa.
Because all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It symbolizes the Third Reich's mechanical methods
Just
of killing
like Hitler
people.
wrote.
Yes. And also Jack's,
That's all Mein Kampf is.
Jack's typewriter is a German typewriter. Yeah.
For Christ's sake.
For crowd's sake.
I feel violated.
I want to leave.
Oh, right.
The movie is
I
just
need to hold my bat.
No one mentioned the schnitzel in the room.
Schnitzel.
the movie is just a whole bunch of fairy tales all compiled into one.
Oh my god.
Yeah, including the story of the labyrinth and the Minotaur, because when Katie and I watched this fucking documentary, they got fixated on the picture of the Minotaur and would not let it
It's
go.
not a picture of a minotaur. It's a promotional poster of a man skiing down a mountain. We're in Oregon. It's a skiing town that they're in, that's why the whole season has come to a close, is because people can't ski anymore because it's too snowy. It's just a dude on a poster in a windbreaker, and this lady thinks it's a minotaur.
Yeah, so if you're watching the
Calm
film...
down, Janet! It's a poster!
If you're watching the film, when Danny is in the games room throwing darts, he sees the dead twins. He turns around and they're standing there. It's on the left side of the screen. It's over the right shoulder of the little girls. Is the poster of the man skiing.
The Mantar.
The Mantar.
Skiing Minotaur.
The Mantar.
Yes. So yeah, those were the big ones.
God bless you both for sitting through that.
It is.
It was really interesting, actually. It wasn't as bad as we make it out to be. We just like to complain.
That's the thing about.
I liked it.
I liked it too.
It did regenerate interest in the film for me again. So it's like, I had said that it's not my favorite Kubrick film, but seeing the documentary again made me go back and and reevaluate it. And so it's like, okay, this there's a lot of stuff that he took from the book that and just magnified that and conspiracy theories aside, I mean, it did regenerate a interest that I didn't think I had for the film. So that alone made me appreciate that documentary a lot.
And that's where the geographic, layout of the hotel was discussed too.
Yes.
That's the first time I had ever heard that theory, and I thought that was really interesting because they pointed out like the natural sunlight and how it didn't really add up, and how the hotel is constantly changing, which I thought was cool.
I just still genuinely believe it depends on what he wanted for his shots, because it's like I think it's a Simpsons house scenario. That house is changing. That house changes to suit the
It's
needs.
a cartoon.
Yeah, and this is a ghost story.
I know. Exactly.
But, I mean, conspiracy
I would
theories.
watch
True
every
story.
minute of the Shining cartoon.
Oh, right?
Right.
Simpsons did it.
Yeah, Simpsons did it.
Sideshow Bob.
Conspiracy theories are always fun to a point.
That's the
And
lady in the
point where, I think.
Ew.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Chris, because now we're going to move on to topic number 4.
All right.
What I have dubbed the darkest theory ever about The Shining. Hey, listeners, I'm going to cut into the podcast for a minute to give you a little warning that the next topic we're about to discuss can be considered triggering or off-putting or upsetting to some listeners. So if you don't want to hear it, I'd suggest skipping forward about 15 minutes into the episode. That's about how long the discussion goes on. And you'll know that you're past it when you hear us talking again about Minotaurs. Thanks. I was doing a lot of reading earlier this week, and
There's
this
your
theory,
first problem.
yeah, this theory comes from a man named Rob Ager, Ager, on his website, Collative Learning, COLLATIVE, learning.com. He's written a lot of extensive articles about different movies, including The Shining. I read through his entire basically thesis about The Shining, which includes a lot of the conspiracy theories from Room 237, includes a lot of information on Stanley Kubrick and the way he treated his actors and such.
Spoiler alert, terribly. For the most part.
Oh, yeah. So this theory is one that Rob Ager does a great job of talking about, and I guess it's a lot older than what I thought. And this is the idea that nothing in the movie actually, or very few things in the movie actually happen as they are presented to us. None of these supernatural elements are real. The entire movie is in Danny's head because Jack Torrance has been sexually abusing him.
Oh, yeah, I have heard this theory before.
And it all starts early on in the movie when, your first hint really is when they all get to the Overlook and Ullman comes up and approaches Jack while he's sitting there reading a magazine. The magazine that he is reading, somebody used the cover to track down what it was. It is a 1978 issue of Playgirl. And the one of the big articles in that issue is called incest. Why do some parents sleep with their children?
Oh my God.
Yes. Now, earlier than that, we have Danny when the doctor comes and visits him after he collapses in the bathroom. One of the big stuffed animals that he's laying against is a bear. And later in the film, we see the man in the bear costume. In Danny's bedroom, hanging above his bed, is a framed photo of a large bear and a smaller bear. When Danny goes into room 237, while he's in there, Jack is working on his book, or supposedly, Wendy is down in the basement. She hears screaming from Jack's writing area, the lounge. She runs up there. He's on the floor. He's having a nightmare. She wakes him up, and he says that he's had a dream where he murdered Wendy and Danny and chopped them up into little pieces. And while Wendy's trying to console him, Danny walks in with the bruises on his neck and his torn sweater. Wendy runs to him and she's trying to console him. She's asking who did this. And she looks at Jack and says, "You did this, you son of a bitch." After earlier, when the doctor was there, going out of her way to try to cover for Jack's behavior when she talks about Danny's broken arm. Oh, Jack cleaned up his act. He stopped drinking. It's been better since then. Jack is then shown after Wendy comes back to him and she says, "Oh, Danny said there's a woman in room 237 that attacked him." He agrees to go and check out the room. What we are shown is Jack going into the room, finding the woman in the tub. They make out. She turns into a disgusting old dead woman. Jack is horrified. And throughout this, we are shown cutaways of Danny appearing to have a seizure or dreaming. It's suggested that he is watching what's going on through The Shining. He's aware of what his dad is going through. Jack runs out of the room horrified, completely distraught. And yet when he gets back to their hotel room, he is completely fine. He is 100% calm. He tells Wendy, "I went to the room, the door was open, the lights were on, there was no one in there." It's obvious Danny had to have done it to himself. That is his story to Wendy. And when she suggests taking Danny to the hospital, he immediately starts deflecting back onto her. How she's always fucked up his life. He's not going to let her fuck up his life anymore. He has a responsibility to the hotel. He is making sure that Danny does not get taken to a hospital, because if he does, then obviously they would find out what's been happening to him. I read this theory and just sat back and was like, what the unholy fuck? Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of evidence in the film to suggest that.
And has Stephen King ever come out and said, like,
No.
I wrote a spoopy book about a hotel?
Essentially, yeah.
Or any of these theories?
No. As far as I'm aware, no. It's just a book about a fucked up haunted hotel.
Well, I mean, we do know that Stephen King does have, he does put young people into very
Oh yeah, he loves putting kids in
intense
peril.
situations, and
That's true.
and a lot abuse is
He did that with
Subtext.
Bev and It.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I mean, Black House, Talisman, children are abused all the time. But I think that's his jumping off point for how to. We're gonna get back at the monsters. Is what the point of, it's like the monsters will not win. They will win a lot of battles throughout time, but in the end, we can defeat those monsters. And I think abuse is just his chosen monster.
is that hinted in at all in Dr. Sleep or in
No.
any of his other works? I mean, other than,
Dr. Sleep deals with the alcoholism.
If I remember correctly, part of what kicks off Dr. Sleep is even after getting out of the Overlook and even after it's been destroyed, the woman from the bathtub continues to haunt Danny.
Ew!
Yeah, and doesn't doesn't she appear to him and like grab his junk?
Excuse you, ma'am.
I think that's his. Yes, it does, but I think that's his initial picture of the vampire, the leader of the vampire group. You know, the tooth that comes out and stuff. So I think that's his initial hint that there's something up, that something's coming back. But yeah, that I think she represents the harbinger, and so she needed to get his attention, so that was the best way.
So, yeah, that is the darkest theory I've ever read about this film.
That is horrible.
I'm going to poke a hole straight into it, at least just from my perspective, which is I believe the story in the beginning of the movie straight up, which is Jack came home drunk and used too much force on Danny, yanked his arm out of place when he tried to pull him away. So, when she looks at him and goes, "You did this, you son of a bitch," what's she thinking when he's been hurt again? He, not even sexually, but he physically grabbed him and did that to him. You don't have to immediately even jump to sexual.
Right.
You and she came to him as he was. How could he have? I don't. Now again, you don't know the actual time frame, but she finds him in a deep REM nightmare,
Right,
and has to shake him out. He's groggy. He cannot. He has to come to, and then Danny walks in right after.
Yeah.
That time frame makes no sense for it to be something like what he's describing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mesh to me, just in that terms of technical sense alone.
Well, one thing that I've always thought fascinating is in the beginning when Wendy's talking to the doctor and she's telling him about the time Jack broke Danny's arm. She says, "But that was 5 months ago," and Jack said he was going to stop drinking, and he hasn't had a drop since.
No,
And then in the bar, when he meets
he said it was
Lloyd,
3 years ago.
yeah, he holds up his drink and he says, "Here's to 5 miserable months." But then as the conversation with Lloyd goes on, he says, "Okay, I did hurt him once. Little fucker had messed up all my stuff, but it was 3 fucking years ago."
Yeah, I caught that.
So with the same character, he has 2 different times. So which was it? Was it 5 months ago or was it 3 years ago? And
He could have dislocated his shoulder 3 years ago, but he didn't commit to stop drinking until 5 months ago.
yeah, I've always just thought that was interesting how that
Yeah.
story changes so
Yeah, it
quickly.
is.
Also, on a lighter note, the biggest genuine laugh I had during this whole movie was after Wendy's done telling the story of how Danny got hurt, it cuts to the doctor staring at her. Mm-hmm. And the look.
Oh my God, yes.
The look. She's like, keep going as though I haven't heard these stories before.
Right.
Just like you fell down some stairs or you
Right.
Yeah.
burned yourself with a curling
The
iron.
most deadpan, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And a round of applause for that supporting cast. Like, the guy that plays Grady is great. The guy that plays Lloyd is fantastic.
it is.
The doctor,
I want to be Lloyd when I grow up.
Okay.
Dead.
Dream. Dead. Dead and serving at a bar.
Yes, I want to be a dead bartender
Yeah.
at a ghost hotel.
I love that scene between Jack and Grady in the red bathroom. That's
Your
the
money's no
best.
good here, Mr. Torrance.
I like the Lloyd scene
have
kind of
to
illustrates just
Correct themselves.
it's like, oh, that's the point where the house has him when he
Yeah.
drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So our last topic of discussion is
Actually, I'm sorry. Before you jump into that, that theory gets to me also because I mean, it's I know.
The sexual abuse theory.
Well, I mean, yeah, that, but also, I know Kubrick's a genius and very detailed and very layered.
We keep saying
But
that, but I'm thinking he's an asshole.
That kind
Most
of goes hand in
geniuses
hand,
are.
He's an
along with
auteur.
along with mental illness.
most geniuses are assholes, but most assholes aren't geniuses.
True dat.
Also, it goes hand in hand with the
Put that
mental
on a
illness of
t-shirt.
making actors do something like dozens of times in a row. When you can have it within 10 takes. But what gets to me,
It's called coverage, man.
No.
One more for safety. Another one for safety.
Well, I guess
We're
because
so safe.
at its heart, this is just he's telling. I think just a very simple ghost story with additional supernatural elements to it. It's
Don't get me wrong. I think that theory is as bananas
Right.
as it's about the Holocaust or Native American genocide.
But I was thinking about and you're right. And I was just thinking about the tendency to overanalyze it just because it's Kubrick. I think that's part of the problem because it's like you look at this at its heart and it's family with slight troubles and a troubled child go to a place that is, from by all accounts, a hotbed of supernatural paranormal anguish. It works its terrible work on them, and shit goes down.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is at the end of the day.
And Kubrick does have a history. I mean, sex is not alien, and alternative or abnormal sexuality is not adverse to Kubrick's not adverse to displaying it and being influenced by it and how to use it in a story.
Eyes Wide Shut, anybody?
Eyes Wide Shut, Clockwork Orange, even his earlier stuff, Spartacus is all about sex but so the idea that he there is the idea that, the whole red rum murder stuff and blood. There's a difference in stakes when it comes to just, describing abuse through alcoholism or something and you broke your, but if you raise the stakes to, possible sexual abuse or at least a really strong, intense physical or emotional abuse, the idea that Danny's going into trying to figure out a way to combat that when nobody else appears to be helping him, and so he's got his friend, and his red
we
rum.
haven't even talked about Tony.
And so it's like this is the only way I can defend myself.
Right.
And then he discovers he has The Shining, and it's like, so that's another tool to protect himself from his dad if his dad is, or even if it's an uncle, or and they're just projecting it onto Jack. But the idea that that just, as a filmmaker or as a creative person, and you need to get your actors to a higher state of raising the stakes, you want to make sure the scene is a life and death scene. So you're that added extra element of stakes and how do I defend myself against something like that when he's my father, and it's like, because the creations that Danny uses or the defense mechanisms is a lot more intense than just simply dealing with alcoholism. Yeah. So he didn't need to create a Tony, or Tony doesn't need to be if it's just dealing with alcoholism. You just don't talk to your dad. But if there's a really intense abuse issue, then yeah, you're creating a Tony to give yourself strength that if you need to rise up against your father and kill him, you have support. So the idea of raising the stakes and obviously this theory is basically a doctoral dissertation for this dude, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
And so and seeing it on that, and that's why I brought up the idea of Stephen King I think every novel he's written, especially the ones that have children as a basis, as heroes, is his thesis about how to deal with his own childhood, how he's dealing with his own experiences, and how he's creating defense mechanisms. So the idea that he's going to create a book that deals with really super intense, and like you brought up it, he takes that idea of abuse much farther into it, and then then you're talking Tommy knockers, and he's creating aliens as responses to abuse and stuff. So the idea that it's not necessarily a far-fetched conspiracy theory as a way to both raise the stakes.
It's not a minotaur in a poster, is it, Stan?
Yeah, I think the Minotaur is still the most ridiculous of all the theories.
I
But the
can't
Minotaur
get
and the
past
Maze,
that.
the Minotaur and the Maze are mythology's representation of abuse and rape and sexual abuse. So that's where the maze.
Yeah,
and the Minotaur-
mythologically, minotaurs were extremely rapey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was the whole. That's the whole.
Well,
thing.
okay,
You
this is
get
completely
sent to
off topic, but this is why anybody who is a big mythology fan and also a big Harry Potter fan should be horrified when Dolores Umbridge gets taken off by the Minotaurs at the end of the 5th book.
She's not coming back.
She is not coming back.
Not as the Dolores Umbridge that we know. That's for sure.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a sentence. It's not necessarily a death sentence, but she's not going to come back the same. You know,
Minotaurs.
She's gonna come back split in twain.
it's either you get sent to the centaurs, or you get sent to the Minotaurs, and the Minotaurs don't have the conscience of the centaurs.
What do the centaurs do?
They're
Centaur
horses.
is a man
Please
with
say baked pies.
The centaurs are horses with bows and arrows, so just imagine what they can do to.
Yeah, somebody remind me
villain.
of where this is completely off
Bows and
topic, but
arrows.
it's going to drive me nuts. What's the difference between a centaur and a minotaur?
Centaurs are half man, half horse.
Horse.
The top half is man. The bottom half is a full horse body.
Okay, and so a
Minotaur
minotaur
is a giant. It's basically a giant man with a bull head.
okay.
And a minotaur is actually is a cursed creature.
I'll say.
But centaurs are actually a race of being on their own, like elves and
And it
dwarves
was
and stuff
placed
like
in a maze.
But
that. Yes, because it's like
Yeah.
we cursed you, and you're going to be in a situation where you can never get out of this
And
place.
in mythology, you escape the maze with the
man,
centaur.
you know
boat
what you
with
guys
string.
should talk
Yes.
about next? It's talking about monsters. Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth. Yeah.
And it turns out that I've been getting
Great.
centaurs and minotaurs confused for years.
Really?
But anyway, all right. So we're gonna move into
Way to
our
stay
final
woke.
topic.
I'm a centaur, motherfucker.
No, you're not.
Don't touch me.
You are not half man.
I'm
half
a
horse.
Sagittarius.
I need to hold my
He
baseball bat
is.
again.
Katie picked up the baseball bat.
He's a mantor.
Don't
He's
look at
half man, half another man.
Ew!
I'm a man. I'm a man. Stan, man.
Oh my God, this has gone off the rails. All right.
feel
So our final
uncomfortable.
topic.
That's all gonna be cut out. I just
It's starting the show.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, we're going to take one more quick break so that I can give a shout out to our sponsor. You've heard of ad blockers, but now it's time to check out sad blockers. Are you tired of reading political posts and watching your friends argue? Does the world get you down every time you get online? Just download the Sad Blocker extension or app and watch in awe as those political posts are replaced with adorable kittens, or piglets and booties, or Barack Obama and Joe Biden being best friends. Sad Blocker. It definitely won't steal your identity or use your browser history to blackmail you. Now, back to the episode. So our final topic for this episode is, what's up with that ending? I love it. So after Wendy and Danny escape the hotel, Jack is left to wander around the hedge maze until hard jump cut to the next morning where he is frozen to death. Which, this is almost surely a coincidence, but if you ever want to compare the look on Jack's face when he takes his first drink at the bar to the face he's making when he's frozen to death in the snow, they are completely identical.
Oh
I
my
looked at
God.
screen grabs.
Ew.
So if you ever feel like reading way too much into something,
That's
you
so
should check
creepy.
that out.
That's a nice little visual bookend, I think.
Yeah. So
I think that's the funniest part of the movie. Is the face that he's making as he's frozen.
yeah.
I'm a little chilly.
So we linger on Jack's frozen corpse for what feels like a very long time before we
Kubrick saying,
cross.
Look at it.
We cross dissolve into a push in on the hallway to the Colorado room in the hotel, which we have seen multiple times throughout the movie. Is got all kinds of framed pictures along the wall, but we're never given any good close-up of any of those pictures. So the camera takes a very long time to push in down the hallway, and then we get closer and closer to the pictures, and we start pushing in on one in particular that is of the July 4th ball at the hotel, a black tie affair where Jack Torrance is in the front of the crowd smiling and waving at the camera, and at the bottom of the picture it says July 4th ball 1921. What the fuck? Katie.
I love it. And but at the same time, you see Jack in the picture, but there's so much more going on in the picture that's affecting him. Like there's a gentleman that's very distinctly putting his arm on Jack's arm to, I don't know if he's stopping him from waving, or like all of the people that are surrounding him in the picture, I'm going to assume were people in the hotel.
I want to take this moment to tell our listeners that Katie and I actually have this picture
in our bathroom,
framed in our bathroom in our home. We look at it every time we
every time I wash my hands, I'm like,
I always said you should have photoshopped your heads onto it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good idea. But to me, it's, going back to Grady saying, you've always been the caretaker here, Mr. Torrance. I know because I've always been here. It's very, I think it's a brilliant ending to, but it still leaves you with a question. And I really appreciate movies like that leave you with a question that you kind of have to decipher your own answer to. If that was always the case, are we in the Stephen King world stuck in a loop? Just like in the Dark Tower series. Like if we're repeating the same timeline and Jack's always been there, is this just another tether of time that we've stepped into and we got to experience in the 1970s or the 80s, whenever it was filmed?
Stan, your thoughts on the picture?
I'm game on the not necessarily the looping, but definitely that this hotel has been doing this forever, and if we include the looping process, maybe this whole story. And you had talked about the younger lover leaving. What if Jack is connected to the younger lover, and
that is a larger part of that theory.
And he left after the black. And maybe that's where the guy is touching him, saying, "You can't leave. You can't leave." And he's trying to get out of there. But this is just the hotel reminding this guy that you tried to get out. You're not getting out. Or Jack, the Jack that we know, is a descendant of this person in the picture. Or and so the hotel finally, we got you back. So it's like none of your offspring can get away from this. Or everybody in that picture is victims of that hotel.
That's what I assumed.
Maybe there was only one person at the...
And after that flashbulb snapped, they all turned into skeletons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
So the idea that and that being a difference from the book is that that's not the ending of the book, but Kubrick needed to go back and Kubrick's all about that, how we loop our lives question, and leaving that question open at the end of all his films. There's a question of looping, or a question of what happened, so the idea that he's providing in context with King and what we've already created with the King book, that this is a viable idea, that this was just another way this was another show the hotel was putting on, and that we just picked Jack Torrance this time. It could have been a story about, Lloyd, and the whole thing could have been about his moment. But no, this time we picked Jack, the guy that was the younger lover of the lady in the bathtub. And he never did. We don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared, but no, not really. He's still here. He
We're
died.
only ever told the story of Grady and his wife and his girls too. Like,
That's true.
We see a lot of death and murder in the hotel. We see the guy with the hatchet in his head or the cleaver or whatever it is, but we're never told like who killed him.
We're also told by Ullman in the beginning that the name of the former caretaker was Charles Grady. But when Jack
he's
meets
Delbert
him,
Grady.
Yes, when Jack meets him at the party, he introduces himself as Delbert Grady.
Oh.
Continuity error, or
And is Grady the actual killer?
a loop.
Maybe he killed everybody, and that,
He was not feeling patriotic on
You
July
know,
the 4th.
and he's the original being of the hotel. The original personification of the hotel, I should say. It's like if we need an image of ourselves to connect with the hotel, he's that first ghost that is hooked onto. And I'm totally not debating, because I totally agree with that. It honestly is a ghost story about this hotel. So that maybe we should just see it as a up and up ghost story. But I think Kubrick provided us with a service by giving us that question, because we're talking about it 40 something years later.
Yeah.
So
38.
38 years later, and so the book is still relevant because the movie is relevant. So King has people going back to The Shining and reading that again. Hence the reason why he wrote Dr. Sleep. So it's like that question provides us with something to talk about, and so I think that's a service that he provided, and it gives that hotel even a longer shelf life in that sense.
Chris Barnes, your thoughts?
All right, you gonna chime in?
Oh, yeah, I was going to go last.
Oh, okay. So my theory is based, since I've seen it for the first time just last night, my theory is entirely based on the conversation that Dick Halloran has with Danny. And that is the hotel itself has a sentience, possibly because of all the terrible things that happened within it. Kind of like that whole theory of, because he says people leave a part of themselves behind. Yeah. And I think enough bad things happened over the years that it developed because he said it can have a kind of like The Shining as well, that it has its own collective miserable sentience.
Yeah.
And misery loves company.
Yeah.
So it just over time developed into something that started picking people out that they knew were troubled. And yeah, it probably started as soon as the interview, when the hotel could feel that's like, oh, this guy might be a good addition.
Yeah.
So it decided it was going to keep him.
So the hotel was also interviewing him in real time, as Ullman was.
Basically.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Mr.
Trapped
Torrance?
here forever.
Trapped in your picture.
Trapped here for eternity? We see
very
that
good
too. We
answer.
see that too.
And I'm thinking,
There's
another
room for
reason
growth.
for Dr. Sleep is that King is saying this was a ghost story because Danny Torrance continues. So it's like it just didn't end with Jack going away. So he's saying that story happened, The Shining happened, and I'm proving it by writing a story about Danny growing up, and that this history comes back for him. But I like that idea that he's another soul for the strength of the hotel to be enhanced.
And I think, personally, the reason I think it happens in the 20s, is you notice when the Gold Room comes alive and there's a party in there, it's also very 20s themed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think since the hotel was built in the early 1900s, I'm guessing the time it saw the most like party, like the biggest
Debauchery.
Its biggest party time was probably in the 20s, the roaring 20s. Especially in the winter month, because you're up there, you're kind of stuck, nothing to do but, party your time away. So that was probably just the setting that the hotel felt was its most grand, if it has like a collective conscience. So it's picking people for roles it wants to keep for eternity.
Exactly.
Because it says you've always been the caretaker.
Yeah.
Now that's the role it's assigned him. Because if that truly was the Grady that they mentioned before, now he's suddenly an eternal butler. And it's just
I always assumed that the reason the Gold Room came alive when it did in that 1920s era and why we get that push into July 4th, 1921 is because that's when everyone was murdered. Like there was a great massacre in the hotel then, and that's why they're trapped there.
possibly.
Well, Rob Ager pointed out in one of the many, many articles as part of his website that when Delbert Grady accidentally spills the drink on Jack's coat, Jack is completely nonplussed, but Grady treats it like he has just spilled a drink on an honored guest and
Right.
he needs to clean up his tuxedo. Rob Ager points out that maybe Jack only thought that he was wearing that red coat and jeans at this party.
And he time hopped back.
Jack was at this party in his finery, in his tuxedo, and Grady had just spilled a drink on his tuxedo.
I guess, but that's odd because when Lloyd first appears, he addresses him like he's had no problem addressing him before. He just jumps straight in.
He still addresses him as Mr. Torrance and tells him his money's no good there.
Yeah, well, that's
No, you're right. That is later.
that's later. The first time he's like,
He tells him his credit is good.
yeah, he just drops right into it like this is not unusual.
Yeah, no. I really like the idea, Chris, that is the hotel evil because of all the evil things that have happened in it, or do evil things happen in the hotel because the hotel's evil?
I feel like it's the first one, just because.
They had to learn.
Yeah, like I said, over time. I think it's just over time, and plus the Indian burial ground that they so
Yes,
casually bulldozed.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. Was there not? This might have been in the book, but not necessarily a mass murder, but there was an accident, and there was a lot of death.
I think you're thinking of It.
Okay, all right.
You're
Yeah.
thinking of the gay club in It that was burned. No, not the gay club. It was the Black Spot.
Yeah,
You're thinking of the Black
accidents that
nightclub
happened.
and It.
But I thought there was something. Did everybody get killed in a mass murder in that picture, or?
That's just what I'm assuming. That's
take it
just
back,
like
actually.
my assumption. Because to Chris's point, if it was built in the 1800s and it's always been evil, why are we only seeing people from the 1920s right now?
Right.
No, actually, I could go either way at this point because I forgot about the Indian burial ground until I brought it back up. It's like if it was early 1900s, so if the building was working its evil from the start, it could have started as like a kind of like a cursed situation, then it developed into something worse as more and more people started just being trapped there or leaving that part of them behind.
Yeah, because that's what one of the reasons why I think that the Minotaur and Maze, because
It has-
the cursing.
It has a collective conscience
Yeah.
because the building tips him off to the fact that his son
Yes.
is psychic.
Yes,
The building's like, your son
Oh,
has
shit.
a gift.
that's the problem for us.
Also, I'm sorry. I think the only nod to the whole boiler situation from the book is the part where Grady lets him out of the storage room. He
Yeah,
frees him.
Kubrick has gone on record in saying that is that is the tip off that these are supernatural things actually happening, and this isn't in people's heads. That's straight from the horse's mouth, which a lot of conspiracy theorists choose to completely disregard.
That's another hole in that theory. It's like, how does he get out of that storage room?
So my thoughts, we have been pretty blasé so far about spoilers for The Shining because it is 38 years old. If you haven't seen it by now,
Be better and see it.
yeah, exactly. And
Take your time.
At least read the book.
You got there.
The Dark Tower has also been out for 14 years 14 years at this point. But I am going to give a spoiler warning for another recent King work, which is Castle Rock. So if you haven't watched Castle Rock, you should avoid the next couple of minutes of this podcast.
Down in Castle Rock.
So
I haven't seen Castle Rock.
yeah, but I know
But
you
I
don't
read
give a
about it.
shit about spoilers. You spoil everything you'll come across.
I'm a spoiler.
You're
So-
spoiled.
Your king spoil us.
Stephen King is in
the sour
love.
milk in the back of the fridge.
Instead of gold, it turns to filth.
Ew.
I'm sorry.
King is in love with this Slaughterhouse-Five concept of things existing out of time. It's in the Dark Tower with the cyclical nature of Roland's quest, how he just keeps starting over at the same point, but sometimes things are different. It's brought up in Castle Rock because Henry's mother is unstuck in time and she starts leaving totems in different places to bring her back to the present. I think the hotel as an entity is also unstuck from time. It exists outside of time. So anybody who dies there, they become part of its history because realistically it has no history.
Right.
It has no past or future or beginning or end. It just is.
I can buy that. It just seems like a bit of a hellmouth.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because literally at one point in the Dark Tower, Roland and his party come across what he refers to as a thinny, which is essentially a tear in reality that takes them from Roland's world into the plague-ridden world of the Stand. And then they find another one to go back to his world, and he talks about when he was a teenager, him and his friends came across one in Castle Rock. It's essentially a thinny that let the two Henrys cross over.
Are you saying thinning or thinny with a Y?
Thinny, Thinnny. Oh. So the hotel basically acts as one. So,
I like that.
yeah.
I like that a lot.
Thin there.
Yeah, so we're never going to this. Of all of Stephen
So
King's
the Overlook
works.
is similar to the Black House and
Yes.
in that sense, and Talisman and Black House.
Yeah.
And it's similar, again, in the Dark Tower, the house that Jake has to go to cross over into Roland's world. Or at the
Which
end
I still argue is that house that is in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they are
That's- oh my
supposed to be
God.
the same house.
And that's why he's able to slip down the well. Pennywise slips down the well to get away. I don't like it. That
Katie hates clowns, listeners, by the way.
but so and especially it makes it even more clear in the movie that when I saw it the first time, I was like, that reminds me of what Black House would look like from the Straub King
so scary.
Black House. You know, it's like and so they are. Or at least
I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be.
thinly
that
related,
the house Jake goes into and the house that the Losers Club goes into, I'm pretty sure are supposed to be the same thing. Now, the Black House from the Straub and King book, I think, is a different entity.
Okay.
But who knows? They might all just be the same thing in different universes.
Right.
But does anybody have any final thoughts they would like to share about The Shining?
I
Before we
do.
wrap up?
I feel like Dick Halloran isn't celebrated enough because he
Agreed.
has
The unsung hero.
Agreed.
He's my favorite.
specifically
He's the best.
because it's just because you come to understand like he has The Shining as well.
Yes.
He has this psychic ability, and he's been working in a hotel that collectively its entity hates him.
Yes.
As mentioned in the Grady Torrance scene where they call him the N-bomb.
Yeah.
So Danny mentions room 237, and he's like, "You don't go in that room." And so clearly the hotel has been clawing at his mind for years.
I turned on.
But he just stone cold kept working there out of spite.
Well, I turned on Paranormal Activity
You gotta
yesterday.
stay regular if you want to stay happy. He's just been eating his prunes and destroying all the bathrooms.
I really feel like he might have been helping keep it at bay while he was working.
Well, there's a scene
Shitting
in,
his brains out.
There's a scene in Paranormal Activity where the isn't the guy like a psychic? And he comes to the couple's house, and he
He's
walks
a demonologist.
Demonologist, and within seconds of his second visit, he's like, "I can't be here. I have to go right now."
It does not
the
want me
entity
here.
Really does not like that I'm here.
They called him over. It's like, please help us, and he was like, no.
This is essentially what has been happening to Dick Halloran for however long he has been working
And
at
he's
the
been
Overlook.
like, "Fuck you, I'm staying."
Yeah,
Yeah.
He does not bounce like this stupid demonologist does.
No,
That guy's a pussy.
that's what's
the
amazing, and I
difference.
feel like maybe he helped keep it at bay.
Yeah,
somewhat.
he's like the.
That's awesome.
If it is a thinny, the Overlook is a thinny. He like is like having the Shining himself is able to seal. So he was able to, because he kind of has. That's what Danny becomes in Doctor Sleep. He's basically sealing those rifts.
Portals.
Sorry, I wasn't laughing at you, Stan. I just immediately in my head I heard the phrase "fuck you, ghost crackers."
I know, right?
And let's not forget, I said earlier that Halloran accomplishes nothing when he gets there. He's at the hotel for 5 minutes and gets axed. But if he hadn't gone through all that hell of getting the snowcat up there, Jack and
Yes.
or Wendy and Danny would have been stuck up there with a hotel that was actively fucking with
Yeah,
them.
at that point it revealed itself, and it's like, and I think part of one, he heard when Jack heard the snowcat. I think the hotel was telling him it was Halloran.
Yeah.
And it's like, you take care of him now.
So not to go down another rabbit hole, these are my final thoughts for The Shining. I love this movie, and I love Dick Halloran. And do you think that when he is that slow push in of him like realizing what's going on, is he connecting with Danny in that moment, or is he connecting with what Danny is seeing in the hotel?
I think he's seeing what Danny is seeing.
Oh, I see.
At least that's the
Okay.
way the movie, I think, presents it to us, is all of a sudden he's got however many miles are between Colorado and Florida. He's seeing through a tunnel what Danny's seeing.
Oh, okay.
I maybe mutually.
Right, like together they're seeing it.
They're and I think that helps Danny, and also Danny say, I can't do this by myself. You know, it's like if you can get here sooner, get here sooner. But I think that it's almost like a concurrent and at the same time realization and connection, and so they're sharing with each other that we need to fill this hole really fast. You know.
Also, my other thought is Danny decides to take a tube of red lipstick to write the iconic word red rum on the door. That red lipstick never makes it on Shelley Duvall's face at any time.
Also-
That she never wears a lick of makeup. Girl, why did you bring your makeup bag up to the Overlook?
In case
It
they
never
need
makes
date
it on her
nights.
face.
I mean,
He takes
Also-
your dog dick red and writes a murder sign on the
also, he
door.
gets one R right and one R backwards. Which,
What an idiot.
well, okay, that's not his fault though. They yanked this child out of
Tony's.
school for 5 months to
Tony's.
live in a hotel.
And it's not he didn't write it.
And they
Tony's
didn't. And they
writing it.
didn't. But I mean, they yanked this kid out of a school for 5 months to go live in a hotel. They don't bring any flashcards or anything. This poor
Well,
kid.
if you notice,
Just watching TV and
if
playing
you
with
look,
trucks.
if you look at the way he wrote it, the D and the second R are both backwards. So
Yeah.
he flipped it halfway into writing red rum. Yeah, I just think that's
It
fascinating.
is.
Yeah, it's great.
I know it was a design choice. It just looked silly to me.
I'm just sad that we never got to see Shelley Duvall actually wear any makeup.
Yeah.
So that's my,
Okay,
that's my singular takeaway from The
I
Shining.
do have two more things I wanted to ask about. One, when the naked lady first comes out of the bathtub to look at Jack Torrance, it's funny. It was the other
She
genuine.
has a name,
What was it?
Lady in the bathroom.
Gladys.
Thank you.
I don't know. Lady
But
in the
that was the
bathtub
first time
one.
we referred to her as naked lady in the bathtub.
Yeah, it
Even
sounded
me
funny.
has been just calling her lady in the bathtub.
Lady in the
I
bathtub.
earlier referred
No,
to
she
her.
important-
she naked. She's not wearing a turtleneck in that
It's
tub.
an important plot point because she starkers.
Yeah.
No, what's funny to me is
Oh gosh.
she's coming out to approach Jack, and Jack is looking at her, and in all his kind of unhinged glory, because his hair is off, he's got the perma 5 o'clock shadow.
She's got that mega bush.
She's not. She does. It was the late 70s, early 80s. It was a different time.
I have glasses.
But she's looking at him. She's not inviting. She's not seductive. She's not beckoning him. She's looking at him as someone who looks like him, but walk into a room. She's like, "What? What are you doing in here?" And I'm kind of scared that I can't get to a phone.
Yeah.
Also, my other problem was, did that hotel have the tanks for the toilets built into the walls? I only saw it in that bathroom. There is no back tank to those toilets.
I think they have bidets too.
Oh, maybe it was
where they
bidet.
watch the children.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's not something you normally see in American hotels.
Well, and whenever we rewatched it, this podcast is going to be 3.5 hours, but whenever we rewatched it, I actively watched who touched who first in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And Jack is the one that touches her first.
Yeah, she basically wanted none of it. For some reason, it looked like
she's a ghost.
And I go back to it being she was the cougar.
Yeah.
And if he's the return of
Lover.
lover, she's going to have a really horrible reaction to that. You know, it's like, why did you come back? You know, you
It was just something that struck
abandoned
me because it wasn't meant to entice Jack. It was just like she looked at best displeased.
Yeah, you interrupted my suicide. I'm drowning myself here.
Excuse me, I was doing something.
Okay, I got to rewatch this scene while we're talking about it because I thought when I watched it, the video's been taken down off of YouTube because, of course, there's a naked lady in it.
Yeah,
I thought she touched him first, but it's only the most like she like reaches out and touches his side, and then he like pounces on her.
He's the first one to make the move though. Like he starts reaching his hands toward her hip.
And boy,
because
does
I wanted
he.
to see who touched who first.
And boy, does he! Because when they're kissing, their noses are just mashing together.
Well, yeah, he gave her the old 1920s lay one on her kiss.
Okay, and
which makes sense because he is in 1921. Okay, sorry.
And this is a more hypothetical thing in regards to Wendy and Jack, because clearly what the hotel does is play on his anger toward his resentment towards her. Do you think when she ran in to say there was a woman in room 237, if she had all, because she clearly believes Danny's story that that's what happened to him at that point. Do you think if she had apologized for accusing him, he would have fought it a little harder?
Oh God.
Because she runs in, she's like, go check room 237. Something that hurt. There's a woman in there. He says that Danny says it hurt him. She doesn't say a thing about accusing him earlier.
Also, I'm sorry that I said you hurt him. That was my bad. I was emotional.
If she because she wants him. She clearly thinks he didn't do it at that point.
I mean, the hotel has been affecting Wendy and Dan at the same time. Danny not so much because he has a Shining, so they have
or more so.
Yeah,
or
he's
more so
very
because he has
affected.
It's trying harder.
Holy
but
shit!
because she breaks herself down to accuse Jack, that just makes it easier for Jack to fall into the hotel's thing. So I agree with you.
If she had taken just a second to go, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It would have been he would.
I feel like he would have. It would have probably led to that moment you say in the book.
So what you're saying is you're blaming the victim.
I'm not blaming the victim.
You're blaming the woman.
No,
I'm not. Okay.
Typical.
We're actually seeing the strength that the manipulative strength of the
because
hotel.
Also in that moment, he doesn't bring it up either.
So.
He doesn't bring it up either. He goes to the room. He goes to look.
Yeah.
Because he still cares about Danny too.
And maybe this is.
I love the little son of a bitch.
Yeah, and it's like I
wouldn't touch a goddamn.
And then
his goddamn Lord.
Her not apologizing or her not giving him support.
I feel like
that's his. Yeah. He has no grasp. He has no grasp.
I don't think it would have made a difference.
But I think it's a subtle moment, and I think it would have at least led to the moment you talk about, where he has that moment where he tells him to get away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that was my conclusion too. I was like, it probably wouldn't have saved him.
We need to do a volume 2 on this film. I have so many things.
I feel like I've done all
a lot of
Well,
feelings.
again, like we've been doing these last few podcasts, I come in saying, it's not my favorite of this director, or now we came close to 2 hours talking about it.
Oh my god!
Well, we're at an hour 37 right now.
Yeah.
So I mean,
hang on, let's pad it out with a tour of
the idea that
real time.
Yeah, can I take? Can
now
I
I'm excited.
You all for positions?
I'm excited about the movie again. So it's like you guys keep putting me into situations where I keep talking about the films that I'm supposedly hating, and then
Let's watch it again.
it's like
Okay.
hey, yeah, I should see The Shining again. That could be a good time.
I mean, it's like we don't wait all year to watch it either. We don't like. There are a handful of movies in our collection that we are like, oh, okay, it's October, let's watch this one. It could be a random Tuesday in March, and I'll be like, I want to watch this show.
In fact, earlier this year, we watched it on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Because Katie and I hate Valentine's
We
Day, and
do.
we invited a bunch of people to our
It is the
house.
perfect
Yeah.
And we watched
We did, and we
The Shining.
laid on blankets on the floor and watched a scary movie.
Did you watch it like that one shot of Jack Nicholson staring out the window?
Ooh,
the
God,
Kubrick
that's
stare.
so freaky.
Yeah, and we keep talking, Kubrick, and he definitely did put his stamp on this.
did.
Because I really don't think we would talk about the book so much because it's distinctly Stephen King, and but I'm at least 75% of us in this room, I think, are pretty good Kubrick fans, or it really.
I've only ever
enjoy
seen A
Kubrick.
Clockwork Orange and The Shining. I'm
We
afraid I'm not
appreciate him, and we
as
know
well versed.
I've seen Doctor Strangelove. I am in the way minority.
You're in the
on that
minority,
one because
yeah.
I was not a huge fan.
that's my favorite Kubrick. But the idea that we know who Kubrick is, that we have appreciation for the stylings and stuff.
Although Doctor Strangelove did give us the line, "There's no fighting in the war room," which is still one of my favorite lines of all time.
But the idea that now I'm back in the place where I want to see it as a Kubrick film. See The Shining as a Kubrick film again, and it's like, and to bring it back into my Kubrick appreciation. I was telling David the other day, this is totally off tangent, but how I'm like, you may be one of 8 people that don't like Strangelove. I'm one of like 6 people that that actually loves Eyes Wide Shut. So it's like,
I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut since it came out in '99. Like
I don't
right
know
after it
if
came
I've
out
ever
on
seen that
VHS.
movie.
It's not that well.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think it's that great.
I mean, it's his full-fledged exploration of sexuality in the sense.
Oh.
So it's like,
And a lot of like Kubrick experts, which put that on a business card,
Weird.
agree that they don't think the finished product that we got, because Kubrick died before
Right.
it was released. Kubrick was known for working on his movies until the very last minute. So a lot of people who are considered Kubrick experts don't think that the final product we got was what he would have delivered. So
how did he die?
I think he had a heart attack, didn't he?
Oh God, probably from the stress of
he was
taking all those.
axed in the chest.
Yeah, take that! I Dick Halloran'd you.
God damn it! I took 82 takes.
Yeah.
Stanley, crap.
Oh yeah, no.
Well, I hope one day that we can all go to the actual Stanley Hotel, because whenever I never ever get bored at work, but whenever there's a lapse of time between doing tasks, I look at the Stanley Hotel all the time, and I want to go there because apparently it's super haunted, and they had a bear walk through their lobby not too long ago.
There we go, talking about
Yeah,
bears
and
again.
it's a metaphor. I wrote a theory about the bear and the Stanley and the bear given the fellatio.
Yeah, massive heart attack at the age of 70.
Berlioz.
6 days after screening a cut of Eyes Wide Shut for the stars.
Oh, so a heart attack.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just sat there
goodness.
going, I need to fix this and this and that.
Yeah.
Oh God.
His list of things to fix was so long that he just,
Also, one more thing. Why in the fresh hell, when you're taking your entire family up to a hotel, would the mother of the family say, "Hey, isn't this where the Donner Party got snowbound?"
Because
What
none
was
of
the
them.
Donner Party, Mom? They ate each other up? Oh, well, doo-doo-doo. Like, why?
I know about
Why?
That-
Why?
He saw it on the
Television. We say that a lot. You mean they ate each other up?
I know about cannibalism. I saw it
I
on
know
TV.
about cannibalism, Dad.
Wendy, darling, light of my life. Okay, folks, that's going to be the end of our discussion right
Get
there,
away from
I
me.
feel. Thank you very much, Katie, for being part of this.
Thank
That was
you
a great time.
Give
very
me the
much.
Wendy, give me the bat.
Yeah.
I love how he just drops out of the
Wendy.
the little lilt.
Yeah.
He just like, give me the bat.
Give me the bat.
All right, and Stan and Chris, thank you for being part of this and indulging me for this film discussion.
fun.
We'll decide.
Again, I enjoyed this so much. This is a blast.
Probably episode 10 or 11, we'll pick another film to do another roundtable discussion like this.
I had a suggestion we should do Halloween. So.
Yeah, we'll probably...
3.
No. We'll probably do
Okay,
that one
fine,
next
6.
October. Try to tie it
16
into
days till
Halloween.
Halloween.
So thank you very much
We've all
for
got your silver
listening
shamrock
to
mask.
Long Walk Talks. Please give a listen and a like and a follow and a review and all of that good stuff for our sister show. This is a Work, hosted by David Two Dogs Hayes. This is a Work is a monthly wrestling WWE podcast, specifically about the WWE's pay-per-view events. And
Hosted by him and no one else.
yes, hosted by him and Chris Barnes. And there's going to be another. What's the next event?
I don't remember.
Oh, that's right. It's Evolution coming out in a couple of weeks, which Katie will also be
Wrestling.
on. You're on that one, right?
I am on that
Oh
one.
boy.
Excellent.
If you
Well,
like
if you have
me
any,
talking about spoopy movies, watch me. Listen to me talk about ladies wrestling.
so if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share about any of the topics we discussed,
Keep them to yourself.
I'd especially love to hear
No.
your opinions about conspiracy theories. Please email them to me,
Send your
david.longwalk
thesis to.
at gmail.com, and I will read it over and we'll talk about it on the air next time. So thank you very much for listening, and have a spooky October.
Peace out.
Bye bye.